Okay, so I am getting started with replacing the strut mount or top hat of my passenger side strut. It is because of a clunk that I've had for a very long time. Even though I replaced a lot of the components of the front suspension, I always thought it was the thrust arm, which is right here. For the most cases, this is always the cause of a clunk, but I replaced it, and I still thought that was my brand new replacement that was still bad. So I replaced it a second time, but the clunk was still there. The only other thing that I could point to is the strut mount. So that's what I'm replacing right now. So before I go ahead and disconnect the EDC module of this strut, I am going to remove the battery. Not the entire battery, but just the negative terminal. So if you come around the back, you have 5 Phillips head screws. 2 are right over here, the third one is here, and then the 2 down at the bottom over there. So once you remove that, you should be able to just pick this plastic covering off, and then what this does, this exposes your battery right here. All I'm going to do is just remove this is probably a 10mm right here, and then I'm going to set it aside. I'll probably wrap it in some sort of a microfiber towel or something, just so it doesn't touch anything else in here. Okay, so I have removed the negative terminal of the battery, and I've wrapped it in a microfiber towel. Just set it aside, because I also plan to replace the steering wheel, and I think it will be helpful when I'll be removing the airbag. So when you come over here to the front passenger side strut, all you have to remove down here is, let me come around the back, this bolt right here. I think this is probably about 18, or yeah, it looks like 18mm. So you have to remove this, and you also have to disconnect the EDC module from the strut. So once you open this cover up, there are 2 connections. You pop those out, remove them. There are 2 clips that are holding it down. So you pop these out like this, and then you can disconnect from this clip right here. It's hard to work with one hand. Okay, so this is now disconnected. This will come out with this strut. Sorry about the light. Alright, so I have removed the bolt for the strut that is being held down right in here, and then the brake line clip kind of goes on top of it. There's a pin which is right in between this clamp for the bottom part of the strut. Keep an eye on that, and then also the module that sits in the front. So this module will always be in the direction of travel. So this is the passenger side, and this module is facing forward. Why I'm saying this is important is when we remove the top mount, or the strut mount or top hat, we have to align a few things based on that pin, and then I will explain that once I have the strut out and I start putting it back together. Okay, so when it comes to the top of the strut, you have these 3 bolts. These are 13mm. You have to remove all these. And the third one is right around here. So when these are out, the strut should fall down. But what I've done is I have put a jack right here on the lower control arm that is basically supporting the hub. Is keeping it up. It's not letting it sort of fall down. Okay, so I have removed the 3 nuts up top for the strut right here. 1, 2, and there's one at the back over there. And then you have to remove the bolt for the pinch, which holds the strut at the bottom, which is right here, and it's also holding the basically this is brake pad sensor, the cable for that. After that, you have to remove this 21mm down here, which is a through and through bolt that goes through. The other side is 21mm as well. So once you have removed this, this should allow this piece to drop down, and then it will give you enough space for the strut to come out of the pinch. Okay, so after removing the bolt for this bottom part of the strut down here, once this is removed, this will hang, and then this should give you a bit of leverage to kind of push down and be able to pull the strut out. Alright, so I got done replacing the strut mount or top hat, and as I had mentioned about this pin right here, that why this pin is so important, and you'll have to keep an eye on this. Because of this pin, you have to accordingly sort of mount your lower spring shim and accordingly the upper spring shim, and also the strut mount. Strut mount, these bolts may appear to be even, but they're not. One of the sides is more spaced out compared to the other. So this one is where it'll be facing the side of the car, isn't towards you. This is more on the front of the car, and this on the back of the car. These two are spaced out more compared to these two. So keeping that in mind, this only goes on the car one way, and this is the right way how it goes. That's why I've kind of put a mark in here so I know. Now, that's one thing, that you have to align this bolt to the pin at the bottom, and then also this notch right here on the strut mount, this spring shim, the top spring shim nib has to sit in the one which is in the direction of travel. So this is a passenger side strut, so the EDC unit is towards the front of the car. Jeez, I can only... Okay, let me explain it this way. So this is the front of the car. That's the direction of travel. This with EDC units will always be towards the front, and then this pin has to align with this bolt where the space is more, right here. And then this has to be in the direction of travel. What this signifies here is basically where the spring is sitting. So if you look inside, this is the edge of the spring, and this nib is what sort of, signifies. Now similarly, once you align the top, you have to align the bottom shim as well, because there's a stop right here. So this has to be aligned properly as well. This plays a huge role in terms of how what's going to be the stance of the car and how it's going to drive. The reason why I say that, I've been through it once where I had put it back together wrong, and I had to remove the struts all over again. Well, actually one of them to fix this whole issue. So this is the old strut. I do not see any damage visually. The rubber bushing inside seems to be okay. I don't see any trouble as such, but I'll know once I drive. But this is how it looks. If you can see, this is how it is. No, wait. Okay, there we go. So these two are spaced out more compared to these two. So if you look here, and then if you see this, there we go. So this was previously aligned with the pin, and then this is how it kind of went into the car. Anyway, so I have put everything back together. I will be now mounting the strut back in the car. And one more thing. So in terms of aligning the pin to the top strut mount, there's a bit of wiggle room. I would say, I don't know, a few millimeters. If I show you the top part of the strut tower, it does give you a bit of wiggle room right here. This is if you're slightly off, and then you can adjust accordingly. But you have to try to, you know, do your best in terms of aligning the pin with the strut mount. Okay, and when you're putting the strut back in, the idea here is to align the top first, and then put the nuts back in here loosely, just so the top end of the strut is held down. And then you have to align the bottom piece, which is this pinch right here, and this pinch will take this strut pin inside. And once you have that, you can run the bolt at the bottom through. This is what actually runs through and through. And on the other side, it has a nut, which is also 21. If I can show it right here, it says 21 millimeter. So once I put it through, then I will just, what I did do is I just made sure that the strut is sitting inside this pinch, and then I jacked it from the bottom. And then what it did, it just pushed the strut back into this pinch in here. Just make sure by touching at the bottom, because this is through and through, just make sure the strut is sitting all the way flush at the bottom. This is pretty solid now. I'm going to put this bolt through, and I'm going to connect the ADC module, and I will then get to torquing everything down, and I can share the torque specs with you. All right. When it comes to torquing everything down, you have to make sure that the front of the car is under load. So what I've done is I've put the jack on the lower control arm, and I've lifted the car pretty much up on that jack until I know that, you know, this is not under load. Which it is not. So the torque spec for the strut carrier that will connect to the lower control arm is 165 Newton meter or 121 foot-pounds. The other bolt that is at the pinch, basically where the strut sits, which is the carrier which we just timed, which is connected to the lower control arm, that is set to 81 Newton meters or 59.74 foot-pounds. All right. Nuts of the strut that connect to the strut tower is 28 Newton meters or 21 foot-pounds. The strut shaft is 48 Newton meter or 35.4 foot-pounds. I'll put everything back together, even the plastic pieces. I have connected the battery, dropped on the idea of installing the steering. Let me start it up and see everything is good with this.
pretty normal for the EDC and 4x4 and so on lights to show up, because I had it up on the jack and then I removed the EDC. But as soon as I took it out for a drive, everything was gone, so everything is clear. Alright, thank you for watching, and subscribe and let me know if you have any comments.